Most of the other 24 states in the United States have between a 2 1/4 and a 4. 1.5 on plastic sheeting. So I wanted to go apples to apples, right? So I found a place that sells plastic sheeting. So plastic sheeting, a 1 1/2 is a $21.25 price. A 4 mil is a 76, a 6 is a 105, and a 10 mil is a 210. So basically, between a 1 1/2 and a 10, it's about a 900% price increase. And between a 6 and a 10, it's about a 100% price increase. So there is a significant price increase. So that's not good, right? But I think the reality is that stores will not default to a 12 mil bag. They will default to a canvas bag, and that is not as expensive. I don't have the pricing here, but I know it's not as expensive. And now we know that they can also default to the paper bag, and if they go with Uline, I don't work there, it can be cost effective, okay? So that's the good news. On the ordinance, so we have in front of us the 2.4 ordinance. The Public Health and Safety voted on this ordinance. This is the ordinance that, as I mentioned to everybody, the only change from from the last ordinance that we looked at to this is that these small stores under 10,000 square feet will not be required at any time to charge the 10 cents. Okay, they will still have to by January 1st of 2021, they will have to be compliant with their paper bags as far as the recyclable content, etc. goes, and they will have to be compliant with any kind of a reusable bag that they offer. I believe that we agreed that that after January 1st of 2020, no single-use bags will be available. And that includes, I just want to clarify, that includes even if you're burning off your stock, if your stock happens to be single-ply bags, that will not apply. Is that what we agreed? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Like if you don't use it all up, you still can't use it.
Right, okay, so
it's the opposite problem. Right.
So we have from now until January 1st, everybody gets to use everything.
Right.
From January 1st for the next year, the larger stores need to be compliant with the paper, and they can't hand out the plastic. The smaller stores get to use what they have in inventory, okay?
For one more year.
For one more year. The only complication is, what if a store, and I can think of one specifically, or I can think of two, that have in their inventory single-ply bags. Are we giving them an additional year to use up that supply or not?
No.
Is that what?
Excuse me, sorry.
I thought that when we did this, we originally said that changeover happens just as you described on 1/1/20, and then we said for the benefit of the smaller stores, we were delaying the effective date for 1 year.
Okay.
Right? So my recollection is that, yes, for a small store, everything changes a year later. Okay. So that means, to my mind, that they are allowed to continue to use
the plastic
bags. They are allowed to give out any stuff.
Okay.
And it's simply the effect. It's a single date of a changeover at any given store, because we didn't want to make it multiple rolling changes for a store.
Right. Okay.
The big ones change on January 1st, 20, and the little ones change on January 1st, 2021. Okay. That's my recollection.
That does make it. That I thought that's what we had, but all of a sudden I started thinking, what if it is a single-use plastic bag? Then what happens? Okay. So it stands that the smaller stores will be able to use up their current supply for the additional year, regardless of what the parameters are for the bags. Okay? They don't have to be the yes?
It's unrelated to what they have in stock, right? They could buy, on Thanksgiving of 2020, they could buy a whole bunch of new plastic bags. They just have to burn them off by 2021. So what they have in stock today is not relevant, right? It's just what they're allowed to give out.
Right.
Okay. Because I know there's other places we've talked about that have gone through a very kind of forensic process of saying, well, when did you buy this bag, and is this what you want? Can you use this bag at this date based on when you bought it? We don't want to do any of that.
Right.
We don't want to be the police on as little as possible.
Correct.
Right. So we're just saying they can use whatever they want. They can use uranium-coated plastic bags with spikes on them, right, until Christmas of 2020.
Right. But we are hoping that they will make a good business decision,
course.
and when they purchase new bags, buy compliant bags. That would make sense.
Completely
Okay.
agree.
Okay. Is that clear, Liz?
So by 1/1/21, that's the drop dead date. Everybody's compliant, regardless of size, regardless of inventory,
Yes.
blah, blah, blah. Got it.
Good.
Compliant for the bag, but they will not be required to collect the 10-cent
Right.
charge even after.
And that
Or this.
right, and that doesn't change for the small stores according to this ordinance, because they'll never have to collect the 10 cents. So there's not a timing issue on that. Correct? Okay, clear?
That's,
They're exempt from that anyway.
Right. That's what this ordinance has. That's what we have in front of us for this. Okay. So, yes.
can I ask, that change in the imposition of the fee was not something we discussed at our last meeting, between the difference between the large and the small.
Right.
So can you help me understand briefly how that came into the conversation?
Sure.
Because I don't think that's a natural outgrowth of what we saw from Wayne, either in the emails that you shared or in the comments he's made publicly.
Right. Okay. So the initial reason for this meeting was to discuss this exemption for the small stores. This was an idea that David Bain brought to me, and I think it was a very good compromise and a way to minimize for the smaller stores the imposition of this, while still achieving the larger goal, which is to remove the single-use plastic bags. I did forward a letter to you that Wayne Fox forwarded to Jamie Stevenson, and it doesn't change, it doesn't say anything different, but it is significantly stronger in tone. And you might have seen the paper today. What is today? Say Thursday?
Yeah,
Today is
this was
Thursday.
the paper
Okay.
today.
Yeah, so there's another big article about the bag ban, and there's another interview with Wayne. Sandy Fox is a great reporter who's done a really great civil service for us, not promoting, but publicizing this bag ban, and that's really how we've been reaching out to the public, except for the public hearings, which we are going to do again. And so she interviewed Wayne, and he said what he has been saying all along, that he has serious reservations about this and about the language and about the potential for a lawsuit. And that hasn't changed. He's been saying this since the get-go. But I did forward his letter to you. I thought that was material and something that we should discuss. Okay? So I'm going to read has everybody read his letter?
Yeah.
I don't need to go through that, guys.
But Wayne's opinion about the imposition of the fee, and again, I'm going to avoid the T word because none of us on this committee thought it was a T. We all thought it was a fee. So I think none of Wayne's logic depends on the size of the establishment.
Right.
Wayne's logic is a blanket thing across the entire
Exactly.
town. So therefore the amendment, the ordinance as we're looking at it tonight, continues to be not in compliance with what Wayne is recommending.
Right, and that's what we have to decide tonight. So tonight,
I don't think, I'm not making a judgment on it, I just want to make sure I'm aligned with you and we
yes.
understand.
So my goal is to, so everybody knows how Wayne feels, and and I think the public knows how he feels. It's been publicized and it's in the paper, like I said, today. So I'm not going to read his letter. We all have that. But I am going to go through what other people that weren't able to make the meeting thought. And my goal for the evening is to decide if we want to keep the 10 cents in or if we want to take the 10 cents out. And we have, it could go pretty much one of three ways. We could have 2.4, which includes the 10 cents and the exemption for the smaller stores, and that could go sailing smoothly through from now until whenever, and that'll just, be wonderful, but not likely. Another option, another potential outcome would be that the ordinance is brought to the floor of the RTM with the 10 cents in it, and somebody makes an amendment from the floor and the 10 cents is stripped out. Possible, very possible. The third option is that we tonight choose to take the 10 cents out, and if somebody wants to make an amendment from the floor and add the 10 cents back in, they can. My goal tonight is, because we have a public hearing on next Wednesday, I need to get something up on the website so that the people in town can look. So I want to vote tonight. Do we have a quorum?
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
We have a quorum. So I want to vote tonight to either basically include the 10 cents or not include the 10 cents. But first, I want to make sure that, forget the 10 cents, are we in favor of this new draft with the exemption for the smaller stores, not requiring them to pay to charge the 10 cents or not? Could I get a sense of the meeting if that clause, which is under exemptions, page 6D, if that's
6D.
page
Section
6,
9, number D.
exemptions, letter D.
Yeah, it's at the very bottom.
I have a question.
Okay, so if everybody could just look at that, okay? Okay, what's your question?
I'm still trying to understand the reason, and I hear that David proposed it as a compromise, but in the last meeting we were not discussing that it was a problem for small stores to collect the 10 cents. We actually wanted the small stores to collect the 10 cents so that they could pay for these expensive bags, and which now you found a company that actually there's no additional charge to it. So I'm still trying to understand why you're making it optional, because some of the smaller stores could potentially benefit from this 10 cents, but if the neighboring stores are not charging, then it becomes like they can't charge for it. So I'm still grappling with why we are bringing this, because last meeting the biggest concern was during sports shop didn't want to collect the 10 cents, but I didn't hear that any other stores had a problem with collecting the 10 cents, did I?
Right.
Correct.
No, the sense of the meeting was that there were people that were against the 10 cents charge, and this is a compromise. The smaller stores don't want to charge the 10 cents.
Oh, they don't want to?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, Fisherman's Net was definitely hesitant about the idea.
At my visiting of the 11 stores that Jamie Stevenson and I visited, and the 3 that Rolf visited, they're not in favor of the charge. So they can still charge.
Got it.
And
okay.
So this was a way.
Yeah.
This was a way
Fine.
to, because the 10 cents in a grocery store is, I think, one concept. The 10 cents at the Fisherman's Net or Uncle's Deli, and so this was sort of a way to meet in the middle. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, and especially considering that you found Uline to be comparable in price to what they are offering now with the paper bags, then it's not a burden to the businesses to actually move.
Right.
Financial burden, anyways,
Right.
to move to that. So
Right.
that relieves that concern too. Okay.
Okay. Okay. So let's get a sense of the meaning. If we agree that the exemption for the small stores, exempting them from the mandatory 10 cents charge, is if people are in favor of that, or if they're not, or if they want to abstain. Who is in favor?
I'm not, because I actually would like to get rid of the whole 10 cents together,
Okay.
altogether. Because after reading Wayne's, I knew that was his opinion before. So backing up from the top, I think the 12 mils is, yes, ridiculously expensive, but that's what you want. You want prohibitive, so people aren't going to order the plastic, so we're getting rid of the plastics. Even if the state comes out and makes, maybe a lower mill rate down the road, and you have out of town, a franchise like a Brooks Brothers, whatever, and we've got a much higher, and they've got, they're not going to go and get those bags. So that takes care of that problem. Problem number 2 I had was the recyclable versus recycled and the 40% content, but we figured out that it's not going to be a burden to the stores, hopefully, and so therefore you don't really need the 10 cents, and I'm not a big fan of telling a store that they have to charge it, don't want to charge it, collect it, keep records and whatever, so it's not gonna deter anyone. 10 cents is
Okay.
nothing, so.
We're gonna
that's-
vote, we're
I
gonna
would
get,
just strike it.
okay, we're
That's
gonna
my
get,
vote.
we're gonna get a sense on this, and then we're gonna come, and then that's gonna be
So I
another
can't vote
discussion.
on that,
Okay,
so
you
I
wanna
abstain on
abstain?
that,
Yes.
yes.
Okay, so
But
who
I
is,
mean, doesn't it, I mean, if the 10 cents is the issue, shouldn't we resolve if 10 cents is even something that's gonna fly before we decide who should be eligible for it?
Who should be exempt?
Yeah,
okay,
I mean, just because, I mean, when I read.
okay, you're right,
When
you're
I
right,
read-
wrong direction.
When I read Wayne's letter, I mean, I thought it was fairly compelling in that, you know, case law seems to indicate we can't defend it. And then when, I don't know how current this information is, which was distributed earlier, it appears, you know, Westport is not charging. Is Greenwich charging?
No.
No, and
But
so.
Greenwich does have a conversation to start charging, and Wayne represents Greenwich as well, right? So
They're changing their
I
stance?
don't know that. Chamber of Commerce hasn't mentioned that to Lindsay, so. Hey, David.
I apologize for being late. I got stuck at work.
Work.
Yes,
Yeah.
work.
Okay, so we're going to reverse it, and we're gonna discuss the, Wayne's letter and our feelings on the 10 cents in general. I'm
So
going to,
your options that you have laid out.
right,
Okay.
okay. So I'm gonna read the people that are not here, I'm going to read their letters because, okay. So I spoke with everybody. The people that weren't able to come tonight, some people asked if they could write in or give their thoughts. This is from Lindsay. Hi Monica, thanks for the call today to update me on the latest developments with the plastic and paper bag ordinance. Unfortunately, I'm unable to attend Thursday's meeting, but do wish to record my thoughts on the proposal. I am in favor of the extension proposed for smaller businesses in Darien to deplete their existing stock of non-compliant bags. While I believe they could make the change in less time, I'm sensitive to the constraints and pressures on our local business folks, and it's a gesture that will hopefully generate some goodwill among that community. As for the 10-cent fee, while I agree with this approach in theory as it relates to changing behaviors, in reality this seems to be potentially the hill this ordinance could die on within the RTM. After trading emails with the head of the Greenwich Chamber of Commerce, a town that does not impose a 10-cent fee, it appears that compliance has been achieved and there have been very few objections or complaints, if any at all, from local businesses. Monica has the email thread if you'd like to view it. If the 10-cent fee is the hang-up that could potentially stop this ordinance from proceeding, then I am in favor of striking it from the proposal. The spirit and bulk of the proposal will still remain intact. Public sentiment and momentum around this topic is clearly moving towards reusable bags. Perhaps change management tactics aren't as needed as much as had been 5 years ago. Bottom line, I don't want this to be the hill this ordinance dies on. From what I understand, we could add in the 10-cent fee from the floor at a later date if needed. I'd be happy to discuss further, and again, I wish I could be there with you all. Best, Lindsay. The Greenwich response from the Chamber of Commerce was, during its initial rollout, our chamber was active in communicating specifics about the bag ordinance through our website and social media. Overall, stores took this initiative seriously, and many wanted to make sure they were fully compliant. We have heard minimal feedback. A few stores have mentioned this is a long time in coming, and that other communities have already implemented similar ordinances. That was from Lindsay. From Patrick, I have, it is doubtful I will be able to attend the committee meeting this evening. My apologies. Having read Mr. Fox's opinion letter, I am left unconvinced that the 10-cent fee is a bad idea. I appreciate Mr. Fox wants the town to avoid falling victim to a lawsuit. That's his job. However, I believe an ordinance in name only without teeth is a waste of time. I believe a 10-cent charge on the bags can have the same kind of impact on our waste disposal problem that the 5-cent deposit fee imposed on cans and bottles had many years ago. Admittedly, that fee imposition was rendered from a Connecticut state statute with a recycling component built in, but the effect was noticeable. Behaviors changed. I believe retailers should be required to impose a 10-cent fee to help their customers remain focused on our growing waste issues and help retailers offset their increased sourcing costs. Darien should try to get ahead of this issue, not continue to fall behind an ordinance without teeth. And this is the point entirely. It would be a disservice to our residents. I have one last one. It's from Jim. Actually, I have two from Jim. Fellow committee members, my apologies for missing yet another meeting. Kudos to all of you who have been working so hard on the proposed ordinance. At our last meeting, I expressed my concerns about town council's warning that a bag fee would be an illegal tax. Because Wayne's comments are public, if we move forward against his advice, we are inviting a lawsuit that will cost the town a lot of money, even if we were to win. We have yet to hear from council on the proposed fines. If the tax is not legal, would the fines for violators be legal? Let's remember the real intent of this ordinance, to remove plastic bags from our waste stream at the source. Therefore, my suggestion would be to report out a clean ordinance, one without the potentially illegal tax. Let the RTM consider that first. If proponents of the bag fee wish to offer an amendment imposing that fee, they can do so. Then the RTM can vote on that amendment up or down. If a full RTM wants to approve the fee, so be it. We have been warned. If the full RTM rejects the fee amendment, the clean ordinance then can be voted upon. If the ordinance is submitted to the full RTM with the fee, it might be defeated in toto, and we are back to square one. Thanks for your time and consideration of this idea. Okay, he then spoke with Frank Kemp, and I believe that he said when the ordinance comes to the full RTM, we can let the body either delete or add the 10-cent charge. It's what I mentioned before, right? We have the three options are kind of what's probably going to happen. Okay, so he says, or you could go with Frank's idea, which is to, it's either to keep the 10-cent fee in and wait for an amendment to pull it out, or to take the 10-cent fee out and wait for an amendment from the floor to put the fee in, okay? So those are the options. Again, David, my goal tonight is to vote on this so that because we have a public hearing next Wednesday, I need to get this. It's already been it's pretty good with Wayne, but I just need to make sure it's okay before we put it on the website so that people can have a chance to look at it before the public hearing. We will also be handing it out at the public hearing. So tonight we have to make a decision what we want to do about the 10 cents. Okay, so we're going to go around the room. So Terry, you started before. You want to continue your thoughts?
So yeah, I think the main gist of this is to get rid of the plastic as much as possible. If we're moving a paper, make sure it's recyclable. We've determined that it can be, maybe a minimal increased cost, but it's not going to be a burden, hopefully, to the businesses, which is my main concern. And I just don't want to go down the road. I don't think that this 10 cents has teeth. If it made it $2 a bag, made it really hurt, then it'd be worth fighting for. I don't think I'd like to see it in. I'd like to see it out.
Okay.
Otherwise, I support everything that we've done.
Okay.
Yeah, so I agree with Patrick that I'd prefer to include the 10-cent fee because it's part of what we've been discussing all along. I think there are good rational reasons for us to include that in the form that we've done. So I like the work that we've done as a committee. So my initial bias is to keep it, right? I don't agree with Patrick that without the 10 cents, this ordinance doesn't have teeth. Elsewhere in the ordinance, we have an enforcement mechanism. We have people who are going to be checking up on businesses. We have a violation process. So I think that's all new and really good work. So I'm very happy with all that. I agree with Lindsay. I don't think this should be the hill that this dies on, right? If people are gonna reject all the good work that's been done and the clear preferences of the people who came to the last public meeting because of this 10-cent thing, then it's not worth it, and we should scrap it just from a practical point of view. I'd rather have 3/4 of a loaf than lose all the good work that's been done here. I mean, that's my perspective. But I would, my fundamental spot is I start where Patrick is, where there's a good reason and a logical reason that we had the 10 cents in, and I'd like to see that remain, if we could. And I don't think that the exemption of this, I mean, I get the exemption of, I mean, this is all, once you start making changes, it feels very slapped together, right? The reason that you're exempting I don't understand why you'd exempt the small stores, right? I mean, I guess I do, because you don't want to, I guess we're reacting to Palmer's being the one that said, well, if you don't have the 10 cents in, I can't support this, right? So the part of the 10 cents rationale is to get Palmer's on board, in addition to the other logical reasons to do this. So the reason we're not exempting the large stores is to make sure that the Palmer's in their competitive set are their support is preserved. So I guess that makes sense. So I guess given all this context, I would keep the exemption for the small stores. If that's what makes this go through, it goes through. But I mean, we have kind of a bit of a Frankenstein monster here. Like, we still have a fee that some people think is unenforceable, and yet we're not charging it. We're not applying it consistently. So I guess I don't know.
Yeah. So let's focus on just the fee right now.
So if I'm focused on the fee, I would prefer to keep the 10-cent fee. But like Lindsay, that's not the hill I'm going to die on. I think we've done a lot of other good work here, and I don't want to see it lost.
Okay. I do want to mention that I did go to the I went to the Public Health and Safety meeting, and they had not seen the letter from Wayne. They were, in the past, they have been against the 10-cent fee. And when I went there, my goal was to discuss this new concept for the smaller stores, and to see if that compromise that David came up with would move them more towards the middle. And it did. My own kind of gut is that I did share the letter with Mac, and I'm sure he's sharing it with his committee, and that will put them back in the other category. So that's just a heads up.
Sorry, did they vote on this?
They voted, yes, they voted on this version 2.4. Again, it was before the letter from Wayne came out.
But the letter from Wayne is from February.
I know, so, but we just got it.
And did they vote to support this ordinance? Or?
Yes, they voted 6 in favor, 1 against, and 2 abstentions.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I'm sorry. So I wanted to throw that out there. Okay, Liz, what do you have to say?
I think the 10-cent fee is not meaningful, and I think potentially unenforceable, and I think it complicates the odds of getting this done, and I think we need to get it done. So I support the clean bill without the 10%.
My turn? Okay. I support retaining the 10-cent fee. I think Frank Kemp has the right idea that we should be presenting the ordinance as it's been drafted, and if there's an issue on the floor, it can be debated there as to whether the 10 cents should be removed. I'm very disturbed about the way Wayne Fox's February 14th letter was delivered to us this week. I asked for an opinion from him back in January. That opinion was apparently delivered to the First Selectman's office on February 14th. I asked for it again at our last meeting on March 11th, and again, we didn't get it till March 19th, 2 days before this meeting. Wayne's opinion, I think, in my opinion, is very superficial. He assumes that the 10-cent fee is a tax without any analysis whatsoever. And in fact, he's dismissive of the argument that, well, because the money doesn't go to the government, that's a creative argument. It's not a creative argument. It's in fact the definition of a tax. I haven't had a chance to research this, but law.com defines tax, which is a legal dictionary, the amount of money usually expressed as a percentage of the purchase price which government imposes upon persons and business entities so as to fund the costs of government. This fee does not fund the costs of government. The purpose of the fee is to regulate behavior. It's a regulatory fee, it is not a tax. And for Wayne to come out with this opinion premised entirely on it being a tax is a disservice, because we have a lengthy tax code here in Connecticut. The Internal Revenue Service has a lengthy tax code. There is plenty of law out there as to what is and isn't a tax. And for him to just assume it without telling us why he believes this is a tax is not fair to this committee. It's not fair that we got it 2 days before we're supposed to meet and vote on this before a public hearing, so we don't have a chance to analyze his opinion and come up with a contravening argument. It's almost like this opinion was kept from us for a long period of time, and I don't really understand why. I think Wayne's effort to dismiss this as a creative argument, I just find kind of dumbfounding in light of what I've seen here. And let me see. There's case law out there that actually talks about, at least in other states, about regulatory fees being appropriate as long as the purpose isn't to raise funds for the government. And this is not to raise funds for the government, it's actually to help businesses and to help small businesses. The compromise I came up with actually hurts small businesses. I don't know why we're really going down that road, because the more I thought about it, they're now losing the opportunity to be compensated for the additional cost of paper bags that we're requiring them to buy. If we really wanted to be friendly to businesses, we'd be saying, you have to charge a 10-cent fee because that's going to make up the difference in the cost differential between the plastic and paper. I was also disappointed that Wayne doesn't give any analysis to whether this regulation is appropriate under the Municipal Powers Act, CGS 7-148. I think under sections 7 and 8 of that provision, we do have the opportunity to do this sort of ordinance and impose that sort of fee, but I'm not a Connecticut lawyer, and I'd like to hear an analysis of that from our Connecticut lawyer, and we haven't got that, and I don't understand why. He says at the end of his letter, just kind of as a throw-out, well, this might be an intrusion into the marketplace. But how is it an intrusion if it's authorized by 7-148? If we have the power to protect our environment and to do things to protect our local environment and to protect the health and safety of our residents and prevent nuisances in our local town, then it shouldn't be an unlawful intrusion into business if the statute authorizes us to do that. Again, there's no analysis of that in this memo.
Well, he does.
If I was presented to this at my office, I would ask for it to be redone. And I would like to see it redone. The problem is we're now up against the wall because we're having our public hearing. We'd like to get this on the RTM by April. And again, this was sent to Town Hall on February 14th. Why are we getting it now? I don't get it. I mean, it's put us in a bad position. It's put the RTM in a bad position. I don't think it's fair to us. It's not fair to this committee and all the work we put into this. I'm really kind of at a loss here. And finally, I mean, I've read a lot of legal opinions. I've written a few. I've written clients about the positions they should take in various cases, and you always analyze risk. What's the risk of being sued? He says, well, you might be exposed to expensive lawsuits. But think about it for a moment. All the towns around us, Norwalk, Stamford, and New Canaan, have imposed this fee, and their ordinances go into effect 6 months before ours. So if there's going to be a lawsuit, how likely is it that Darien is going to be the target of that lawsuit versus one of these other towns, which are much bigger and have more residents and more businesses affected by it? I think the risk here is very minimal. And for people to just accept this letter at face value, I think it really does a disservice to the town. I think, I love Wayne. I think he's an excellent lawyer. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be giving some critical thought to a letter like this that we get with no legal citation and really just, just opinions without authority or without basis. I just don't think it's fair to the RTM. It undermines the fundamental purpose of the statute, which is to try to change behavior, not just to get rid of plastic, because paper isn't any better. So, if we're not going to try to change consumer behavior and move people towards reusable bags, I think we're really undermining an essential purpose of the statute by removing the 10-cent fee. So I know I've been long-winded. I apologize. I'll try to be quiet for the rest of the evening.
Okay.
But I think Frank Kemp's proposal of keeping the statute as we've written it in place and dealing with this on the floor of the RTM is the better way to go.
Okay. So you're a yes.
Yeah, I'm.
Yes.
Just very quickly amplify something David said. Again, I respect Wayne and the work he's done. As I shared with you before the meeting, Monica, I was very, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't comment on the content of this memo, and I certainly see the points you're making, David, and I agree with them. This is the first time that I can recall in the 6 terms that I've been on the RTM that Wayne has made comments publicly about this. So I guess in addition to the fact that we're seeing it 35 days after it went to Jamie, which I find very problematic, I also find it very problematic that Wayne seems to be taking public positions on a very important part of this conversation before he's come to answer the questions that David has posed and other people have posed to this group. I mean, I don't want to allege anything about Wayne, that's not my intent here, but I have to say, from a process point of view, this has been very irregular, and to David's point, it puts us in a very, it really hurts our ability to get our job done as part of this.
Well, it is troubling that he gave his opinion to the Darien Times before he gave it to the RTM.
Well,
I mean, I won't say anything more than that, but I just don't understand how that happened.
But I'm going to go back and say that he, and the article today says that he has said this in the past. He said it to me, and I know I've said it to you. I've read different things that he said. This letter is, I asked him for, to substantiate his position, and that's what this letter is. But his position hasn't changed at all, and I think his talking to the press, let's look at it from his point of view. The press calls him, and
but that's why we asked for this letter, so that we could see it, discuss it, analyze it, and then maybe bring him in to discuss it with him before it went out in the press and was a headline in the top fold of the Darien Times saying, proposed bag ordinance is illegal.
No, it didn't.
Most people aren't going to, well, it said words to that effect. Most people aren't going to read beyond the headline.
he has never said the ordinance is illegal.
Well, whatever, I don't have the headline in front of me, but it was improper or
Okay. Yeah, okay,
So-
we're going to keep it moving. Arpita, what do you have to say?
So, I don't know where to start, but okay, so the one thing that has always bothered me when we discuss this ordinance is that this ordinance is not about a plastic bag ban. It's about management of plastic and paper checkout bags. It's bring your own bag ordinance. It is not about just getting rid of plastic bag. And as we were discussing this prior to going around the room, for a minute I myself forgot that, because I tried to remind myself this is not about plastic bag ban, this is not about that, it's about changing behavior. And the reason why I bring that up is because when we were discussing the mill and the price of a plastic bag versus the paper bag, I was like, oh yeah, the 10-cent bag charge, I mean, it becomes moot because really the retailers are not going to buy the plastic bag for the most part unless you're buying expensive stuff and they really do want you to have a canvas bag or a nice plastic bag. They're going to move to paper. But then again, the conversation is we don't even want them to necessarily use paper. We want Darien residents to stop using bags that are putting, not just going into the waste stream, but also putting a huge carbon footprint that we have to then come back and revise in a few years, or we have to deal with that as a society. And so that's where I feel that 10-cent charge has teeth. I'm not a lawyer, but this is definitely one of the things that in reading up, trying to understand what a tax means versus a fee means, I have to defer to people who know better in that terms, and I would like to understand this portion of it. So to me, it's like going back to Frank's conversation that let's put the 10-cent charge in. And before you came in, David, I brought up that conversation that actually taking away the 10 cents from the small business actually hurts them. But then Monica mentioned to me that when she spoke to, or mentioned at the meeting that when she spoke to the smaller businesses, they actually did not want to have to charge that or keep accounting. So if it's optional for small businesses, then they can decide what they want to do. And I'm okay with that compromise, or okay with everybody paying that 10 cents, to your point that we're muddying it up, and now is that going to create more issues because we're exempting some businesses but not others? So can we be accused of playing favorites and protecting our own while throwing the national brands, kind of a thing? And
if anything, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, you can.
No, I'm sorry for
Go ahead. Why don't you finish it?
So in that whole thing, like I feel then I would like Frank Kemp's suggestion to go forward with the 10 cent and then let somebody make a movement on the RTM floor to either take it away or not. And if this committee feels that the compromise is what we should support and put it forward, I'm good with that. But ideally, I would like that 10 cent for everybody, not just for small or big businesses, in the interest of, again, maybe we don't penalize the small businesses for not charging the 10 cent, but we say that they should be charging it.
Okay. David, Arpita mentioned something before, but I did some research and I was able to find a company, Uline, that charges the same amount actually for, on the recyclable bag, the paper bag, the same amount for a recycled bag versus and the 40% or a regular bag, and it works out to about 5.5 cents a bag. So,
Monica, just to clarify, that is versus a recycled content paper bag versus a regular paper bag, right?
this is a 100% recycled, minimum 40% post-consumer content.
Right, versus a regular paper bag.
That's the recycled bag, and the regular bag is just your regular paper bag. It's,
Right, but it's still more than a plastic
Yes.
single-use bag.
Yes.
So that's where the 10 cent helps a small business.
Right. A single plastic bag costs about $0.0125.
Right. So going back to that conversation that I was having at the beginning of the meeting, that by taking away the 10 cents, and then David, you came in and you said the same thing, we are actually putting the burden now on the small business to cover that difference, however small it is. And yes, they could go ahead and still charge the 10 cent, but if the town is kind of telling them charge it, then we are the ones who are the bad,
Right.
in the whole.
But like I said, my own experience has been that they don't want
Right,
it,
so either or, I'm good with
Right.
either or. I would like that 10 cent to be for everybody, but I'm absolutely comfortable with going with 10 cents only for the larger businesses, because again, that's where, when you go grocery shopping, that's where you're getting a lot of paper bags. So if you can even eliminate that completely, that would be amazing.
Okay.
Thanks, Monica.
My purpose at the start of this process was the elimination of the plastic bags from grocery stores. And that's still my purpose. The paper is not as much of a concern to me. I favor eliminating it, and this way the ordinance passes, in my judgment. So I believe in taking the 10 cents out. There's parts of this ordinance I still don't agree with, but to me, life is compromise, and I like simple legislation, and this makes it simple legislation, and it achieves the objective in town that you will not go in the grocery store and get this 1.5 milliliter bag. And that was my purpose in all this, and not the other purposes.
Similar to what Dick has said, my initial thoughts here was just to eliminate the plastic single-use bags. However, I do understand that as an alternative, we have to address the paper bag. With regards to the fee, if I were to give my druthers, I'd rather not have the fee. And part of my reasoning is that the market for paper is a very dynamic market, particularly right now with the fact that China, for all intent and purposes, has shut down taking any paper from the United States. And so an industry that was in decline for 20 years here in the States with regards to the production of paper and paper bags is now all of a sudden in a totally different situation than what it was before. And I had a conversation with Jeff Schroeder, who works for Duro Bag in the New England area, and they are a big supplier in the United States for bags. And he's saying right now the demand for this recycled 40% bag is, he'll be selling bags. He doesn't even worry about selling bags because there's so much demand right now because both coasts are adopting this type of legislation and is creating a demand that is very substantial. I asked him about a craft paper bag cost versus recyclable, and he says, well, actually right now the market is such that the cost is very similar, as you have said, but he said the reason is because the price of the recycled product has come up. Okay, and that's why they're similar. A virgin paper versus recycled is because the demand for the recycled has come up to where they're now comparable. Okay, so the price of paper bags recycled 40% is up from where it had been in the past due to the market conditions that are going on today. Okay, and he sees this being the case for the foreseeable future because there simply isn't the industry existing in the United States, at least, to respond to this market change, and it's a very substantial market change. The paper coming in the United States that is being bought overseas is now being diverted to Korea, India, Vietnam, but the China market is closed for all intent and purposes. And these other markets are buying up that paper but at much, much lower prices. So the market conditions are certainly, I think, something to keep into consideration. So from my perspective, again, if I were to have my druthers, I think that the market's going to fluctuate quite a bit in the future, both up and down. And who say, okay, you can charge 10 cents. I'm not sure that that's really going to be responsive to what's going to be happening in the market. I think the market's going to be volatile, and this 10 cents might cover part of it, but I don't think it's going to cover all of what their costs are going to be as time goes on with this market. And I think really it'd be more appropriate that the retailer just incorporate this in as part of his consumables and cost of goods sold, and then reflect that in the sell price of his product, and regain whatever costs related to the increase for the bag be covered in that fashion, and that that's equitably spread over the price of the product itself, and everybody participates in that, both the retailer as well as the consumer. That's my first reaction to the 10-cent fee. Okay. Having said that,
Tough decision.
I think that I want to get this passed. We have to put something out. So if we want to go with it as it's drafted today, I don't have a problem with that. But I do think we have to make clear about what is legal counsel's position on this with the RTM, good, bad, or indifferent, because I think the RTM should have full understanding when they make a vote. And if they then decide to put this out as a debate, an amendment, whatever from there, fine. But I think it should be out in the open for them to be aware of as they vote. Does that answer your question?
So are you?
So in summation,
Bring it home, Ro. I'll go with it as it is right now for purposes of the upcoming.
So you'll keep it in?
Yeah, we'll go with it as it is right now, particularly in light with the the open meeting that's coming up next week, and see what feedback we get.
Right.
Okay, because since Jeff's letter's in the public domain now, I'm sure that it's going to come up in the midst of that hearing. I have no doubt, and so we'll probably maybe get a better feel about the whole thing from that. And that's just next week, so.
Okay.
Your feelings.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'd like
You
to
don't
hear
get
that.
to sit quiet, not have an opinion.
I agree.
This is a really difficult, as I said earlier, it will either go to the floor of the RTM with the 10 cents in, and the possibility of somebody making an amendment to strip it is there, or we can take it out and there could be an amendment from the floor to put it in.
So would you propose we go forward with it as it is currently drafted?
Well, I'm thinking, because I'm the swing vote here,
Oh,
so that's why I'm really thinking.
Well, I hope you don't make your decision based on Wayne's letter until we get more clarification.
Well, I am actually considering Wayne's letter because he says, as a general principle, a municipality cannot impose a tax unless specifically authorized by the state statutes. The Connecticut General Statutes, in particular, 7148, allows for an imposition of a tax on property, subjects or objects which may be lawfully taxed. There is no statute which authorizes a tax on plastic bags. There must be statutory authority for any such tax to be imposed.
But that assumes this is a tax.
Right.
That's the problem with his opinion.
That
Right.
completely dodges the point. But
Right.
I think
Nothing precludes us from adding the tax. He also alludes to some statewide legislation that could be coming up, and if that were to change.
No, Wayne is correct. If this is a tax, then we cannot do it. But I don't believe, based on what I've seen in the last, 48 hours, that this is a tax. And, I could be wrong. I'm not a Connecticut lawyer. But I think we deserve a deeper analysis from Wayne on that question
well,
before we strike it. And it could be, we're going to have another meeting after the public hearing, right? Before we.
right.
So isn't that the time to consider striking this and changing the ordinance? I think Rolf is right. I think we should hear from the public.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested to hear what happens next week. I'll be there for sure.
Okay, so you know what I'm going to say? I'm going to go with, we present this draft 2.4 with the exemption for the small businesses, and we keep the 10 cents charge in with the understanding that there's an ongoing discussion about it and that we are waiting for a little more clarification from Wayne, and also to continue the dialogue with the public. So that would be my recommendation. Yes?
from a process point of view, since public health and safety has already voted on this document, right? If we were to change it in any way at this point, that would invalidate their vote. They would, in theory, have to re-vote to either approve or reject anything that we redraft.
Right.
Is that correct?
Right.
So I guess from the position of wanting to make progress on this, I guess I would think that we're, I don't want to say obligated, but it's probably procedurally wisest for us to move forward with this draft so that we can say that, I'm hoping that this group will support this draft, right? Because I think we've worked hard on it for all the reasons I said. And public health and safety supported it now. And do you have a read from Frank Kemp as to TGS&A's position on this?
TGS&A did not look at this draft with the exemptions for small stores. And I want to be clear that I think public health and safety, once they reflect on this letter from Wayne, their vote could go very different. But in the interest of getting a document up and letting the public take a look at it before the meeting on Wednesday, with the understanding that it will not be the final draft. We will be making some changes. That's why we're having a public hearing, and it's possible that we will meet and we will decide for the interest of the big goal of the ban, we must take out the 10 cents. That's a real possibility. But I think right now we should go forward with the 2.4. So can I have, yes?
I just want to also state one thing for the meeting record, that when we did have the public hearing, so I agree with Rob that the public hearing second time around would be very helpful, but the first public hearing that we had, people who did speak did support the 10-cent charge. And Wayne's comments were known to most of us even at that point. So I also find that as the legislative branch and representing people in Darien, we need to be cognizant of the fact that the people who did make the time and effort to come and speak to us, that they were saying that they were supportive of the 10-cent charge for all businesses.
I think my general feeling from the public hearing is that the public wasn't really as educated on the ban as I had thought they were. And they were more, I think, along what Dick is thinking, is that this was a ban on plastic bags at grocery stores. So I think that public hearing helped, and I think that having an actual ordinance to take a look at is our goal. So I would like to have somebody make a motion that we move 2.4 to...
Well, Monica, point of order, are we going to discuss the compromise proposal that I proposed to you? Because it's different than what we discussed last time, or are you guys all?
But that's what
That's what's in here.
Right, that's
That's-
2.4, that we're exempting small stores
Right.
entirely. Yeah.
Right.
Okay,
On a permanent basis.
okay, and you guys are all fine with that?
So that's what
So
we're,
what we're really voting on though is whether we're gonna let this be the subject of conversation in the public hearing,
Correct.
not the final version
Correct.
of what we're going
Okay.
to support.
yes,
So that's what we're voting on.
Yes.
This is the version we'll continue to work with.
yes,
Can I just reflect that back though, right? I think if we endorse this, and again, I would certainly vote for this, we're saying that this is our recommendation to go forward, right?
See, I'm
None-
not seeing it
no,
that way.
No,
no,
is that
no,
not?
I think that's a push.
I think
And I
that's
think
why-
if you ask for that vote, that might not go.
Since you,
No.
The way
you
you
have
want.
the vote, Monica gives you the vote, then I would vote against it so that in public hearing, there is the understanding that there are members who want the 10 cents taken out. And my position is, I'd like to see it pass. I'd like to see it banned from grocery stores. And the simpler the legislation before the RTM, the less possibility of it failing.
Great.
And I feel it failed the last time because they made it more difficult. So that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, and I want to be clear, if we are voting for this, I'm voting to put out in public a draft copy, not voting on a final proposal,
Right.
Correct,
and not assuming that we support this as stood. That we're putting forward a draft to be fine-tuned and further voted on down the road. I'm not saying I support this.
this would be a motion to move 2.4 to the public hearing for discussion by and comment from the public on the Wednesday, March 27th, public hearing meeting. Would somebody make a motion for that? Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay,
It's unanimous.
unanimous.
There you go.
Right.
Beautiful.
Is the hearing Tuesday or Wednesday? We've had two different.
The 27th, I believe.
Wednesday,
Wednesday's the
the
27th.
27th.
Once you get out of
It's 8 o'clock,
Okay.
town hall.
Let's see, 40.
I know, but better than 9 o'clock.
Okay.
Okay, is there anything else to discuss?
It's a special meeting, we can't just.
Okay,
I know we pushed off the meeting minutes for the 11th, the
Yes.
next time,
Yes.
but I think we're missing one from 2 meetings ago, 3 meetings that we didn't quite get, so you might want to look into that
I'll
as
double check it. I
well.
thought I caught us up to speed last night,
No,
but
but I
maybe
think we
not.
still
Okay.
didn't get them. so-
You're right, you know what, there's one that, right, there's one that, I wasn't able to pull down from the
Yes.
website.
Yes.
Yes, I will get back to that.
Because
So-
that one I had issues with, I think they had your name like
Right.
backwards in it.
Right,
Mr. Roll.
Yes, Mr. Roll.
so our next
It's
meeting,
happened before, so.
so, who knows that they will not be at the public hearing on Wednesday?
I will not be at the public
You
hearing.
won't, okay,
I'm not
I'm
sure.
not sure. I'm
okay,
not sure.
okay.
Well, if you're worried about the clerk, she's already done me, so you can go.
I'm not worried.
Okay, I
We
will
agreed that
be,
we'd rotate the clerk, so I think I've
okay,
carried some
I will
water.
give you a heads up that I will be canceling the April 8th meeting, I'll be out of town.
When's the RTM meeting? Are we trying to get this on for April?
Yes, the rules meeting is April 1st, and so I spoke with Wayne, and if which is really tight, so the public hearing is next Wednesday, the rules meeting
Following Monday.
is on Monday. And I asked him if there weren't a lot of changes after the public hearing, if he thought he could get this in working order to get to the Rules Committee for the April 1st meeting, in which case then they would take a look at it and hopefully put it on the agenda for the May 22nd. He
What are
felt
they
that,
gonna look at if we
May,
haven't
April
voted on it?
22.
well, we're going to,
Yeah, in theory, we'd have to have a meeting between the public
Yeah.
hearing and the rules committee meeting.
Right.
which would be next week.
Yes.
Okay.
Right, and the meeting is the
Meeting would have to be Thursday.
Thursday
And we
or
have to
Friday.
do that in a way that we could also circulate to health and safety and to TGS&A in that time frame.
Very timely manner.
And the joint meeting
That's
might be
too
good
tight.
with all committees.
That'll be, I'm gonna try and keep it G-rated. That'll be a bit of a circus.
I understand, but I mean, we keep going, well, they voted on this and that, you know, it's like, get everybody in one place. That's-
The only way we could do that,
Yes.
I will be out of town the 28th and 29th.
Well, town hall is open on Saturday mornings for meetings now.
I'm back
Just
10
putting that
o'clock
there.
on the 31st. So the only way we could
Is that the Sunday?
meet is if we did it before the rules meeting on Monday.
Let's do it.
That seems
time is the rules
challenging,
meeting?
isn't that? Because I mean, that would assume that we're able to deliberate, agree, finalize, and vote in one meeting, and that we can then communicate that in a coherent way immediately to rules in a way that they'd be comfortable forwarding on to the rest of the RTM. I think that's asking a
Let's
lot.
push. Okay.
When is the budget meeting for the RTM?
Budget meeting
May.
is May 20th. So we are looking at, I'm sorry, May 13th.
So why not try to get this for maybe the first week of June?
So the next RTM meeting will be June 10th.
Okay.
Okay.
That's
So
better than trying to do right
Yeah,
before.
I
rules
just
committee.
don't see us
Yeah.
pulling it together
Right.
that fast.
It's not good.
Okay.
Morning.
Okay. All right. So is that the general feeling that June 10th is our goal?
Yeah, it's evolved that way.
Realistically speaking.
Can I just ask a question? If we had a meeting on the Thursday, right, the 28th, we would at that point be able to take the feedback from the 27th, right? In the best case, where there's not substantial changes, disagreement, argument, right, we would be able to endorse this, right, or whatever modification to
adjust
this
it.
comes out of the 27th, and we'd be able to move forward on that, recommend it to TGSA, Public Health and Safety. I mean, I think that if we want to get this on the April meeting, it's not impossible.
I won't be here on Thursday night.
Okay, we have a vice chair?
I was just gonna say, is it
That would be
mandatory?
Okay, so,
Yeah, can the vice chair, if he's able to or willing, pick up on the 28th in your absence?
Yeah, but then she can't vote.
And she can't vote.
I don't see the rush to get it on
Yeah.
You don't see the rush?
by
Okay.
60 days, because if it gets approved June 10th, it's still basically 6 months,
6 months.
right.
which
Yeah.
what we were trying to get in the first place.
June
And you know
10th
what?
is totally workable.
Yeah.
I'm just concerned that like we've run into multiple delays and delays. I'm just trying to, do the end zone dive here. If we make it, we make it. If we
I don't
don't,
think
we
we
don't.
get delays at this point.
Yeah,
And I'd
I
rather
would
have a
be-
little cushion of
Really? Would you like to bet on that? It's that wagering season.
I mean, I always thought June was more realistic, so.
I'm not comfortable in passing it off.
Okay.
Okay.
And TGSNA did not actually vote on this version 2.4.
Okay.
So I think that we could regret rushing this.
That's fine. I'm just
and
trying to
I
give
don't
us
want to do
options.
all this work and then have a glitch because we, made a push and missed something. So,
It's fine.
I think that's wise. I think the June becomes our goal. I think
Yeah. Plus June allows you time to talk to the other committees.
right.
And also, if you really want to press for more clarification from Wayne, you have some time there to get that response. Do we want to make a formal request of that?
I'd write that letter. Absolutely.
Oh.
Come on.
Now's the
I
time
mean,
to do it if you
Well, why
want.
instead of him writing a letter, why don't I invite him to come and speak to our group?
sure.
Okay, let's
Well,
try
I'd like
that.
some
But
legal
I think
authority. I mean-
David had some very specific questions that I think are very well formed, and I
David,
think
why don't you send me those questions?
Okay.
Okay,
Please put it on my to-do list.
put it on the to-do list. Okay,
But
Yeah,
that-
I mean, I think it's better to get something in writing from him, because I'd really like to see some legal authority for his positions. I mean, he may have it, and, but I
he
think we need to
does-
see it.
he does know a Texas case.
He references 2 cases. I've
Right.
seen, but he doesn't tell us what they are. I think I know the California case, but the Texas case he cites seems totally irrelevant, because in Texas, according to his description of it, the state has basically taken over the entire waste disposal business for the entire state, and that's not true here in Connecticut. Every town, we maintain our own transfer stations. We do our DPWs do our own garbage collection and garbage management. So that Texas case has nothing to do with us.
Okay.
to your point, it's Texas, it's not Connecticut. So.
Well, I mean, the California case, which goes in favor of the regulatory fee concept, is California, but the rationale from what I've read of it seems appropriate. That where a fee is done to regulate or to enforce the police power and the purpose of an ordinance or a statute, and is not done to raise revenue for the state, then it's not a tax. It's a regulatory fee and a use of the state's police power or powers to, promote the public good.
Okay, well,
So, I mean,
clearly,
these are
yeah.
distinct legal concepts which I think are better off written down
Okay,
so that people can think about them and question them,
Okay.
rather than just, getting a kind of a face-to-face discussion of them before they're all fully formed.
okay, we will ask them for even more.
I have to chime in that, particularly when this goes to the RTM, that kind of specific information that you're describing, I think would be extremely helpful for the RTM to be able to read and be aware of before they make any sort of vote.
Right.
Right, because Wayne has so much credibility. He's like, I mean, I was making this joke earlier, somebody's like the law speaker. Whatever he says is the law. He's like, and rightfully so. I mean,
true.
But he and he deserves that credibility because he's a very bright guy, he's a very smart lawyer, and he's been around the block multiple times in Connecticut. But that doesn't mean we're not entitled to question his opinions and to ask for backup for him, and that's really all I'm doing here.
We'll ask for backup. I appreciate that, and I think that's the right thing to do. Terry?
Is there a rules committee early May? Do you get that before then to get it to June?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There are multiple. One before the budget meeting.
Just making sure, like, if we didn't make April, then we're.
Yes, we're not screwed.
I didn't think so, but I just wanted to
No,
verify.
the May 20th rules meeting would be where it would be put on the June 10th
Okay,
RTM meeting.
perfect.
So our goal really is May 20th,
Yes.
not June 10th.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Well,
Right around the corner.
I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
Who's second, Terry?
Yep.
Okay. All in favor?
All in favor?